I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on November 11th, 2019. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. Today is a special BP10 edition. If you're listening live, we'd love to have you join us in our chat room. There's a link to that in the video right on our live page, right above the video window, just above there. You can go to the live YouTube instance. Join us in the chat room. If you have questions after the fact, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Bobby Shaw and Jeff Johnson are our guests today. Bobby is a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach, BP10 trained, and a senior executive in the restaurant industry. And Jeff is a Strategic Relations Director at ABBA, the Austin Bridge Builders Alliance that works with marketplace leaders and the faith-based communities there in Austin. Gentlemen, welcome to Called to Coach.
It's our pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having us.
Good to have you. We want to get right down to business. You guys are together as a partnership, doing some pretty incredible things in the Austin area. You reached out and said, hey, we want to talk about it. And of course, we always love to hear about those kinds of success stories. So, Bobby, let's start with you. Give us just a little smidgen more than what I gave in your bio, but then we want to talk a little bit about your partnership. And Jeff, you do the same.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Bobby Shaw, and I've been in the restaurant industry really my whole life, up until about 2017 when I transitioned over to create my own coaching practice. I went through Gallup training early on, and then I became a coach in 2017. So I went through a class with Rod Carr, which was amazing. And so, I got certified, and for me, that was like, this is what I want to be doing. And so that's what I began to do. And so I began to work in that space. I work primarily with business leaders and owners to help them understand their strengths and how to really help people be able to use their strengths to be able to create great organizations. And then I went through BP10 training that year in December of 2017. And that really was something that I latched onto and said, this is very different, but it's the same sort of thing, but it's not. And so I had to really kind of work through that. And it was really helpful to be able to work with Todd and, the team there at Gallup to really understand the BP10. And it really changed my life. It really did. It helped me understand a lot about who I am as a leader and what I'm really great at. And so I began to really think about how I could utilize that BP10 and which really just transitioned over into the partnership with Jeff.
Cool. Jeff, let's find out a little bit about you, just a little more than we gave in your bio.
Yeah. So Austin native, which has always been kind of fun. Love this city and love working here. And my title, strategic relations is just vague enough to let me do a lot of things in the city. Primarily, it's relationally based. So our nonprofit kind of works to connect leaders around the city to really address kind of those systemic issues that we've been trying things for years and years and years. And just really not kind of moving the needle. And our whole kind of premise is, what if people who don't traditionally talk, maybe leaders of faith and civic and nonprofit and marketplace, if they start to all talk together to come up with some combined solutions, understand where they're each strong and where they might need help, then maybe we could push things forward. And really kind of what led to this partnership with Bobby was this idea that leadership development, that affecting the next generation might be one of our best ways forward as we really look at long-term solutions to some systemic issues in our community.
It's a good segue into this partnership idea. And Bobby, let's throw it back to you. Talk a little bit about what are you guys doing together, and let's get a little more depth on the partnership that you have together.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I began coaching with Gallup and I began that journey, I knew that we were working on some things here at ABBA to really kind of create what Jeff was talking about, which is how do we create a platform where we can invest in that next generation of the leaders that we wanted to invest in. And he was still trying to put it together and didn't know exactly what it looked like. And then I went through the B10 training. I went through the training for the BP10. And I remember being at the airport in Omaha. It was right around the holidays. It was December. It was the last class of the year. And I remember calling Jeff from the airport in Omaha saying, we have got to, this is what we should be doing. Like, this is the curriculum that we should be using. I can't wait to share it with you. And I'd sent him everything I already had from Todd. And I said, look, we got to meet about this. And so We did. I came home and we met after the holidays and we got together and we started talking about what that would look like using those resources for that BP10 curriculum, what that would look like in the context of what we're doing here, which is the Emergent Leader Initiative, which I'll let Jeff talk about.
Yeah, I mean, really, it all kind of came from just a little bit earlier than Bobby headed out to Omaha. We had gathered about 5 or 6 just community leaders, you know, from Chamber of Commerce, pastor, business leader, just some folks, and basically asked them the question, you know, what does it look like for a community to thrive, to be successful, to flourish, and what does it look like in their own lives? And this really kind of interesting theme came out where they each talked about a person who invested in them and brought them along, taught them something important, some key fact, but it was all kind of happenstance, that they just happened to meet this person they happened to work with, live next to, go to church with, whatever it was, this person. And so the question became, can we do that intentionally? Could we intentionally connect people and also give them the information they need? And really what we were lacking was a curriculum piece. You know, we had some people who were like, man, I would be a mentor. If you gave me a hungry young leader, I would give my time. But what are we going to talk about? How are we going to lead them? You know, and so, yeah, that's when Bobby kind of called 2 months later and said, I've got this unreleased book at the time. You know, it's like, we can't read it. There is no actual. So we're kind of talking about, okay, what is this? You know, we're very familiar with strengths, which helped kind of take the conversation down before there was an actual curriculum. But man, as we started to look at BP10, we were starting to put some kind of flesh on these bones of this idea of, can we intentionally work with young leaders to both help them be better at business, but also start to look at their community differently.
Yeah. And I think it's that intentional part that was really important as well, Jim, because I think we all realize that we've all had a person in our life that have helped to, you know, see something in us that maybe we didn't see in ourselves. And that was certainly my story as a young leader, where I had someone really invest in me. But now we have language for it. And now we have a tool for it. Now we can really help to really change that dialogue from what do you do to what are you building? And but it's more intentional than it ever has been with these tools. So
can you mentioned the word curriculum a couple times and as you were explaining this, can you dig in? Let's go a little bit deeper on that. What's this look like?
So within the ELI,
Emergent Leader Initiative.
Yes, within the Emergent Leader Initiative, we have them basically for 8 or 9 months, and there are 8 tools, as everyone knows, that come along with the BP10, and so it just
these are standard tools, right? These are
standard tools.
On the website,
the opportunity
available,
external, the self schema, all those tools, and so it just happened to really lay out really well on a calendar for the time, because we have these folks in Emergent Leader Initiative from basically September through May is really about the timeline. So we have them for quite a long time. So what it allows us to do is really do a deep dive into each of these tools. And so we spend part of the time, we have them for about an hour and a half each month. So we spend part of that time working through each of those tools in order to help them through all the 3 keys that they need to have, you know, helping them understand themselves and how to be able to recognize opportunities, all those things. And so that's what we're kind of using as the curriculum. So when I use that term curriculum, I'm just talking about the tools that are part of BP10.
Yeah.
And it's worked out really great. And there's been some really eye-opening things that have happened through that.
Yeah. I mean, that is what jumped off the page at us at first, is we knew we had 8 sessions. And so this kind of broke down into 8 tools.
Yeah.
And it really does work well. You know, it's one of many programs that we do here in Austin. And so this idea that we have one cohort meeting 1 day a month, you know, that's something we're looking at as we realize, man, you can, in 1 day a month, you can actually move people forward pretty well over a 9-month period and do some pretty significant investing in their own leadership development. And, you know, so we're looking at it right now of even what would that look like multiple days a month or something else, because we've been pretty happy with where people move and the value that they talk about getting out of it as they go through this process.
And there is another aspect that we should talk about with the coaches, the mentors.
Yeah. And so we're with the students an hour and a half a month, and then they pair that with a one-on-one with a mentor coach. These aren't professionally trained coaches, all of them, but a mentor or coach that they meet with kind of the 2 weeks later.
Right.
So they'll meet with us 2 weeks later, meet with their coach 2 weeks later, have another class, but it kind of keeps that rhythm going of twice a month, kind of updating this and moving forward with where they're at.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the once a month is too long or too good? You kind of mentioned this. Could you do it? Could you accelerate that and get the same impact, or you feel like that once a month is really the right cadence?
This is year 2 for us, Jim. And I think that what we've learned through year 1 is that they enjoy coming back as a group. They enjoy being able to get back together again and to share their insights. So I think right now, I think that's the model, but it does lead into another part of what we want to talk about a little bit later, which how can we take this to the local high schools and do the future builder challenge? So, but I think right now, working through it once a month, because these folks all have jobs. They're all in organizations. They either run companies or they're a part of other organizations. And so we feel like that's the right rhythm, at least for right now.
For a certain crowd, I mean, again, we are looking at, we'll probably pilot that idea as well, both with potentially the high schoolers, but also with some of our, young business leaders in kind of that 25 to 35 range to see how they respond. But definitely we've asked that question, and the response has been kind of this drip pattern rather than kind of the, fire hose pattern has allowed people to actually apply it. Now, some of them, especially your key builders who are already running their own companies and entrepreneurs, we warn them that it's going to feel very slow. It's going to feel very self-introspective. And we spend a lot of time on self-awareness, the whole first kind of third of the book. When that takes you 3 months, it feels slow to those guys, when are we going to do something? But we make that intentional, to say, look, the whole process is about self-awareness. And until you understand who you are,
that's right,
you're not going to lead out of it, but you're also not going to lead others to understand who they are in your organization. And this whole idea of building teams that operate with this builder mindset rather than just the key leader operating that way it takes time, so we do like it, but we are going to probably pilot this next year, a couple of instances of maybe a weekend, something like that, where you can put all 8 hours, or really, I guess it's more like 12 hours into a weekend. We'll see. That's a lot more content in a short span.
Yeah. You have to kind of keep us posted on how that goes in accelerated version. Bobby, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think what we also know is that we have an entire group of people, really a generation of people who really need this. And they're kind of in the group that we're working with right now. So that 25 to 35-year-old leader who maybe didn't get this sort of, well, they didn't get this for sure, but who didn't really, they might be in a position of leadership. They might be running an organization. They might have a team that they're in charge of, but they really don't know. They're not really confident about what it is that they are really doing. So what we found through this year and a half now doing this is that helping them unearth those talents and how to use those talents to be able to help them be able to achieve more. It's been really important, I think, for this group. So as much as we want to focus on high school students, and we will, we also know we have to get this group of leaders really engaged, because to be honest, we need them to help invest in the next generation as well. So it's been interesting, because I don't want to lose a generation. And that's kind of what we felt like that we might be doing, right? We have a group of leaders that are in position that need this as much as anyone.
Mm-hmm.
What about, and this, I know it's going to be out from left field, but what about a guy like me who may be interested? I'm 15 years out from retirement, and I'm kind of thinking about like, hey, maybe as I go into retirement, I'll create my own business. I'll be a builder, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys see many of those appear? We sometimes target the young in this entrepreneurial space, thinking it's only 20-year-olds that can start companies. But are you seeing others maybe with the diversity of range? And then maybe we always think about it at 20-year-old males. Are you guys seeing some demographic changes as well as we kind of look at this generation of builders?
Absolutely, we are. Yeah.
This so of the programs we do, this is actually the most kind of diverse, both gender-wise and ethnically. Just the range has been really pretty exciting to us, between kind of male-female split and just all across the board. And most recently this year, so year 1 was mostly in that kind of 25 really to 35 range, probably even 31. But this last year, we had a number of folks over 40 who applied.
Mid-40s.
And so we just kind of gave them a warning, like you might look a little different than the rest of the room, but if you're willing to be there, we really want to know, is this, does it apply? So that's a question we're asking, like, can this apply to somebody in their mid 40s as well? And most of them are in a kind of a career shifting time.
They're in transition.
My kids are graduating, or, I'm thinking about what's next. Getting out of the military, just in a big organization and have a chance to choose which path I'm going to take. And so those are the kind of people. So we do have a couple of folks,
Yeah, we do.
probably 2 or 3 this
Yeah, we
year
do.
who fit that bill. So we're watching them,
and they're all
how
in.
they do it.
I mean, they are all in. I mean, they're all about it because they see this as an opportunity because I've accomplished this, but now I can go do something completely different. But now I know how to do it. And now I know how to approach it. Now I know who to surround myself with. And that's been super empowering for them.
Yeah, I'll channel Todd here for a second, because if he was here, this is what he would say, is that, we went from entrepreneur to builder on purpose, because that entrepreneur idea kind of was this, 20, 25-year-old, and nothing wrong with that, right? There's lots of advantages to being that age and trying some things new, and the risk, the amount of risk that you can take, and the amount of responsibilities you have. There's a lot to that, but we were finding that this idea of builder is much more generationally diverse. It's much more culturally diverse. It's much more genderly diverse.
That's right.
It's a diverse idea that can work inside and outside of companies, right? We're seeing builder things. We're seeing actual change. None of this would be of any value if we weren't seeing any kinds of changes that are happening in it, right? So tell us some stories. You're a year or two into this. What kind of changes, how is it being effective for you guys?
Well, I will just want to say this first, and something that's in the book, and I know it's something that Todd talks about all the time, but we use the language all the time as well, which is that we're all building something. And that seems to really resonate with people, where they're building a nonprofit, where they're building a business, a family, a church, whatever it might be. And that really opens the door for people. It immediately helps people feel at ease, because they may not fit that, typical 20-year-old entrepreneur model, right? That archetype, but that's okay. So I think just even that opens up that conversation for people, because they immediately start to connect things that they would have never connected before if we would have used the entrepreneur. But we do have some stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's so year one, over the course of the 9 months, we had 3 different people change either companies or positions based on this kind of, they started questioning, okay, is what I'm doing lining up both with my passion and my talent? And as not that they didn't like their current jobs, but as they started to say what could be, it was really kind of interesting to watch them go through that. Either take a bigger role inside their own company, or 2 of them changed companies as well. The crazy thing to me, anyway, I mean, that's 9 months. That's a pretty significant shift in 9 months.
Yeah, it's a short window.
In the first month and a half this year, we already have 3 people who have made a similar jump. So we've done a little more kind of pre-work to where they know more about what they're getting into, and just the pre-work lining up to our first session with the cohort, we already had 3 people who were in transition saying, okay. And again, that's part of the flexibility of youth. They have a little more opportunity to move, but it is exciting to see them saying, okay, what am I shaped to do, and where can that fit in my profession? And so we love that. And it's one of the reasons we really think that coach mentor is so important too, because we can't dive into the specifics of that in our class when we have, 10, 12 people together. So we think it's so important for them to have that individual to really walk through the questions of, how do I do this without, just shaking my whole life apart? How do I move into a new industry or a new job or new whatever? But that's been one of the things that we've taken as a success out of this, is that people are actually using it and applying it to move into new areas. I mean, the other part of it is we have a young couple this year. It's a first for us too. It's a husband-wife team. She technically leads the business, but they've been founders together, and they have a third partner as well. But after about a month and a half in too, she came to one of the meetings and said, okay, I feel so much better. Like, we went through all this stuff. I'm the expert. He's the this, and we're in the right places. We formed this 3-person team, and we're in the right places. And that just, it felt good to them as they're saying, okay, we're looking at our young company that just got their first round of funding, and we feel good about what we're doing. And we know who we need, so it's been really exciting to see people use the information. And these are intelligent people. Like, they had already started a business. They had already moved to Austin, and they were already running. But to see them find value that quickly in this was really encouraging to us too.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too, Jim, in the way that we're modeling this that is really helpful, is that they're all in the room together, working through their tools, working through their opportunity tool, working through their purpose journal, working through these things together. And then they get to hear each other kind of talk about what they're working on. I think that's an element that's really helpful. It's kind of that positive peer interaction that they have. And it's almost validation, I think, in some cases, that what they're feeling is what everyone's feeling. And so it's been great. We saw it last year where they began to kind of partner together. They began to, even out of the class, they were, doing dinners together, drinks together, things like that. So I think having that, group is really important. In fact, I would share this too. We actually had a couple of those leaders last year in year one that have come back this year for year two, and they're actually helping us now, which is the way it should work, right?
Yeah, some alumni, right? You have
That's exactly how we're
support.
treating it, right?
Yeah.
Because in my world, as an operator in the restaurant industry, it's all about developing your replacement to be as good or better than you are, right? So if you can come alongside a new group of young leaders and be able to, transfer your knowledge to them, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Do you find they're partnering with each other as well? Is that happening where because they're hearing these stories, they're thinking, oh, wait a minute, we need this and I'm hearing this in you. Have you had any of those examples?
Absolutely. We've seen it on both sides in terms of even the coaches, right? So some of the coaches that they're actually working with outside of our class, they've actually paired up with other students.
Yeah, I mean, to talk about the generational impact of it, bringing the coaches along, and they all receive a copy of the book as well, and have a chance to go through the material, and most of them are in the 50 to 60 range, but they in the business world, networks exist across all generations, and so that's just been kind of a fascinating thing too, is to see some of these folks who are in the coaching role actually making business partnerships with some of these young leaders, and then connecting them. And we thought we were going to make a bunch of one-to-one connections, 20 different one-to-one connections. But what's happened is you've actually kind of made this mix of 20 to 20 connections where it has formed a much more, much stronger network.
Absolutely.
As we move forward.
Yeah. Interesting, as we were talking earlier about the frequency at which you meet. And if you accelerate this, do you run the risk of diffusing some of that? Because those relationships happen over time, right? Those relationships happen when water goes under the bridge.
Yeah.
Do you feel like in an accelerated model that may shortcut that and that those relationships wouldn't have time to grow?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we might have an opportunity to do is to maybe run a parallel path where maybe we do kind of an advanced training component that maybe looks a little bit different. And so, we're still trying to figure out what that might look like, but absolutely, we want these relationships, and we think those are going to be for the long term.
Yeah, we still think the idea of a monthly gathering is important. How much of it revolves around content is what we're kind of playing with, right? Is can we do the content up front and then let them work on it? And that's the other side of it is, I mean, like we all know with kind of a coaching thing, it's about the accountability. Are you actually doing what you said you were going to do?
Right.
And so that regular touch allows us to keep asking those questions. Okay, you said you're going to do this. We made the plan. We read out all the things. It's 3 months later. What are you actually doing?
Right.
And so we feel like that's a really important piece to this too, to kind of keep the regular connection, because it holds them accountable to what they said they wanted to do, right?
It helps you gather some metrics, right? I mean, you got to let some of that time go under. We do have a question from the chat room. There's a big focus on PP10 here, which they love. How are you integrating CliftonStrengths into the program, and in what stages are you guys? How is that fitting in? You alluded to, Bobby, to that early
great
in the conversation.
Yeah. We certainly acknowledge that at the very beginning, because we know there is a relationship between the two. And so while we're really working strictly with that BP10, we certainly acknowledge StrengthsFinder. A number of folks that are coming through what we built have already done the StrengthsFinder as well. So we always talk about the relationship between the two. So.
And so year one, we actually had them all take the test. Year two, all of them had already taken StrengthsFinder, right?
Yep.
So that is one of the things that we asked them for in the first place, because that's a natural question they have too, is like, okay, I have my 5 strengths. I have these 4 talents. The words might be similar, so I'm a relationship, I'm a relator.
Relator, what are the two? Yeah.
And so we walk through that at the beginning, and just kind of how we frame it in a lot of ways is that, strengths, it is kind of that personal, how I relate to my world and how I am best able to be successful and productive, right? And then
the BP10 is really role driven. It's really your role specific. It's what you're doing, and so that seems to really help to alleviate any confusion around it.
Yeah, and it helps them if you're thinking about organizational development, right? I'm looking if it goes a little beyond personal with the BP10, then now I'm thinking either about my department in my company or my whole company or this division, whatever it is. So as you think kind of organizationally, the BP10 just gives you a little better handles to hold on to say, because not everybody in your direct reports is going to have the same strength set,
which we don't want them to have, right? And so we want them to have their top 4 and really be able to invest in those, but then also learn to surround themselves with people who are strong in the areas that they're not. Which has been great.
Well, it creates some incredible coaching conversations as well.
Absolutely.
when you're looking at the two. Back in the days when I used to write code, I was a database developer, and we had this thing called a multidimensional database model. And you would think of strengths as one layer, and then you would think of BP10 as another, and where those two intersect. In the multidimensional model, that's where there's a data component there. And I think there's a character component in there when we think about where BP10 and strengths intersect. It's in this area, and it's great for coaching. You mentioned mentors. Yeah. Where did you find mentors? How did that work? How did you connect the mentors together? Explain that a little bit, because I think that's the hardest part about this sometimes, is bringing in either outside or mentors to help.
Yeah. Well, so ABBA has been an organization of relationships, basically, for years and years. And so when we first kind of started this, that's where we turned, was to the folks who have been kind of with us for the longest that we've known. Again, it started around this dinner where annually we would gather leaders from the city together. And that's kind of our story. But I would just say, honestly, this would be like a chamber of commerce. Where I have seen leaders like this who have been willing to give similarly, might be a chamber of commerce or a Rotary, or some group of people in the city who recognize that there is benefit for us all when we all get stronger, right? And so they're already gathered around that idea that we live in a cooperative world, that when all of us get stronger, all of us get better. And so that's kind of was at the heartbeat of this. And then we looked at those leaders and basically said, look, we're asking you for, an hour a month for 9 months. Right. And so that's the commitment that we're asking them to make, which is not significant. We're asking quite a bit more of Bobby to go through all the training with Gallup and do all those kind of things. And then he's with us for, 2 sessions, all those kind of things. But for the rest of these, it was really, it's an hour a month for 9 months. And so I think the number of people who would be willing to give you that might be larger than you know. And I would just say, find an organization right now, again, whether it's your local chamber of commerce or some group of folks that you know who already meet together, and start that conversation. As we think about the high school, especially, doing, kind of one of those programs, that's what we've done. We've talked to, local chambers, local businesses, local people who have a desire to give back to the community. And honestly, finding folks who are willing to give us time to coach and mentor is not our, that's not our bottleneck.
No.
And so that's been kind of good news.
Jeff, Bobby, hold on. Before you say that, hold that thought for 1 second. Jeff, Austin, though, known as kind of the second Silicon Valley, and in a lot of ways, right? There's a lot of tech things going on. Do you find it difficult in that kind of scenario where it's high tech, high industry? There's probably already a lot of this kind of going on. Do you guys find it difficult to find mentors? And if a community was finding it difficult, what kind of pointers would you give? Because I think a lot of people find that part hard.
Yeah. So no, I mean, finding mentors has not been our difficulty. There are programs, but I'll say there, as we talk about this, partially the BP10 itself is so new, and the idea of talking about builders that it you see their eyes kind of light up, so people are already kind of investing in schools, maybe, or they're going and trying to be a mentor, but that so much of that doesn't have a framework that it can oftentimes be frustrating to people because they don't know what they're supposed to do. That's still one of the first questions we answer with our mentor. They're like, what am I supposed to do? Right. So having the BP10 framework, they're not experts. They haven't gone, and gotten the coaching, but you guys lay it all out right there in the book, and so just having that, they're like, okay, I have some framework now for what I'm supposed to do. So that's been helpful. And then this whole idea of investing in young leaders, identifying people who have those specific talents to build, that's pretty new as well, still, and it's pretty fresh. There are a few programs, some incubators for people trying to kind of identify them, and especially in a city like this, there's a lot of angel investors, those kind of things. But but this is still unique enough that it can move. But again, I would say the key to it is find a group of people that are already meeting around this idea. This is where churches, chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs, like those are the places I would go if I didn't have an ABBA, right, that already kind of had its own network. Those are the networks I would go to look for to say, hey, here's an idea. What do you guys think? And would you be willing to help invest in it if all I'm asking you for is an hour a month, or a weekend, a year, whatever kind of a deal. So,
Bobby, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. You continue your thought.
No problem. I would say also, just on that note, that I think what you're going to find is that you're going to find people that are really interested in leadership development at a really high level, more than ever. And I think that happens in every city. Now, they may not know how to channel that, but, because that's something, if we're honest, no one was really talking about 20 years ago. No one's really talking about that. And so it's something that's kind of grown. There's been a lot of great things written about leadership development, but now this is something really tangible that we can provide to someone to say, look, we can help you unearth those talents to help you go out and create something really amazing. And so I think people want that. And so it's just a matter of engaging them wherever they might be around the conversation of leadership development. And I think that if you start there, then I think that there's an outgrowth to where we want to get to.
And I'll just say in our surveys, so we do surveys throughout the year, and at the end of the year, as we really talk about evaluating the program, what we tell our coaches now is it is the highest rated part of it. So it and the curriculum are the two things that kind of get the top rating. And so we know if nothing else, what we have to keep in this program is BP10 curriculum and the coach connection. And so I think maybe there's a question between people of, do young leaders or do other leaders really value my time, or do they need it? Or am I just kind of having this unnecessary conversation? We give them a resounding yes. They value that time. They need it. And I'll say one of the surprising findings we had, and we heard it a number of times, and already I've heard it again this year, is there's this idea in the marketplace today that you have to be perfect at everything or else you're going to get fired or kicked out, right? You have to already know everything. You can't admit that you might actually need help or else they're going to kick you out. And so having a safe space, which is what this mentor, a coach, this cohort area that we've had, where we'll just look at them and say, look, we don't need you to sell us on how great you are. We need you to be honest with us about the questions you have and about the issues you're facing, because we know you're facing them. And so once they break over that barrier of like, okay, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to admit I actually need help. And everybody's not going to just kick me out. Man, that has been one of the opportunities for people to experience real growth. But it's been something in this program that we've seen. And so I would just, again, that's something that coaches offer, is that safe space for people to talk about what's really going on. And sometimes it's personal, like my home life's falling apart and that's affecting my job. It's like, okay, well then that's what we need to talk about. Yeah. We need to align here, like how do we need to address this? So that idea of creating an opportunity for people to share. And again, the coaches, the mentors make that possible, because we can't get into that in a classroom setting as deeply as you might want to, but those one-on-one conversations allow it.
Although as you begin to break through that barrier, what we are seeing happen in the classroom is you're starting to see the cohorts kind of challenge each other. You're starting to see them say, well, what about this? You said this, but you're doing, it's been really interesting. It just happened last month, right? Where we had a good exchange across the room, during the evening group. And it was really great to see, but that doesn't happen without you being vulnerable. And that doesn't happen with you creating that space where they feel like they can do that. So
couple questions from the chat room. Do you guys use the Cir report when talking with coaches?
No, we've not yet done that yet. I've talked to Jeff about that. I've actually got his intensity report as well. But not yet, because we just feel like there's so much to really dig into just with the BP10, just really focusing on those top 4 talents. So that might be something that we do in future years.
Well, you did. So again, I'll kind of remind you. So a couple of our students that really wanted to push on, that ask us basically about April, they're like, so what's next?
Right.
Which year one, we didn't have a what's next.
Right.
And it's because we were just trying to figure out if this was going to work. But a couple of those you've done some more follow-up work with, because they were like, look, I need you to help me flesh this out some more. And so those are your owners, right? So people who are currently running businesses, they have so much more direct application. And so they will oftentimes ask for more. And that's where they get into more of those kind of deeper reports.
But that is true, but we've not done that across the board.
Not across the board.
But that is, certainly a thing we might do. One thing I am very interested in doing is looking at the role intensities, which we now have, which I think have been really enlightening for me. I'm a conductor, but it's almost equal with me being a rainmaker. So Jeff is a rainmaker, which is super handy because I'm more comfortable in that conductor role. But I think that has some real possibility to help people understand their roles. So.
Jeff, what's the connection to the faith-based side? I mean, we mentioned that early on, and we think about ABBA, and you've mentioned Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, or even on the church side. What's that connection there? Because I don't think in the entrepreneurial builder space, oftentimes we make that connection back to faith-based organizations. How are you guys making that connection?
Yeah. So again, historically, our primary relationships in the city were with pastors to start with. As we looked out across the city and said, who is concerned about the needs in the city? That's a group of people that should have been concerned about the needs of the city at least. And so the original network was of about 300 pastors in the city. And so then as we began moving into this marketplace side, we had CEOs, which a lot of times went to the churches of those pastors, right? But what we found was they did not talk to each other about leadership development and community development, these kind of things. And so that's what our dinners became about. It's like, hey, let's just start a conversation around, you're both good leaders. You see yourselves as separate, but in so many ways you're not. And so when we talk about the faith-based component, really it's about responsibility. Who's going to take responsibility for our community? Is it their problem? They being the schools district, the government, the whatever, or is it our problem because we all live here? And that was really kind of the answer we got to, was this is our responsibility as business leaders, as church leaders. You know, the mayor will sometimes poke his head into those meetings and just say, look, as government, all of us together, it's our responsibility. So what is our answer going to be? Which is really where leadership development came out. We felt like that's what, from a faith side, from a marketplace side, that we could say, if we invest in new leaders, because that wasn't normal, to be quite honest. Our 50 something leaders, a lot of them, it wasn't until they were 55, 60, they were kind of retiring and asking, what can I give back? What can I do next? That they would start to think about the community. Not that they were great people, but they were building companies, you know? And so what we changed was, well, what if we kind of start that conversation in your 20s and 30s to say, can I build a company and build my community at the same time? And again, we think BP10 really flowed really well into that, and just this idea of partnership and building teams, but giving them that awareness. So for us, that's where the faith component comes in, and they, you know, we'll have different folks come in and speak to the students every now and then. Today we have a person who was a former pastor and now runs a mortgage company and is a professor at some local university. I mean, the guy, I guess he's done a lot of things in his life, but to kind of share that journey. You know, here's what it looks like when he started looking at the community and taking responsibility for it. So
we do want to get to the high school program, but let me do some rapid fire. We'll call this the lightning round. I'm going to throw some questions at you from the chat room. We won't spend too much time on them, but Ricardo had asked, are you guys partnering with incubators or venture capital firms, this initiative as well?
Working on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have not actually matched any capital to any ideas yet, but that's in process.
That's in the planning. Lizzie's asking about positioning this. I'll summarize this question. We know it's great at kind of the startup, but is this mindset, are you seeing this in a builder mindset, maybe in an established organizations where a vertical is coming up out of the organization that has a builder mindset to it?
Absolutely. I think we really saw that in year one, and we saw that in a couple different folks. And I think that we're absolutely positioning that, because what we don't want people to feel like is you have to go out and start something new. If you're in an organization that you love and that you feel valued and that you're really contributing in, this gives them an opportunity to be innovative and to be able to use their talents to create something within that organization.
Yep. Yeah. And just, some of our folks who have hiring decisions within a large organization, it has changed the way they view their team. I mean, they even use the language now, like, well, we really got to get an expert. We're all conductors and rainmakers here, and, or whatever the language is. And so it has affected even the way they look at their role inside of a larger organization.
Yeah. Jeff asked the questions, are there students taking on their roles and avoiding the frustrations that come from roles they don't use as much? Are you seeing more satisfaction? And I'd add, are you measuring satisfaction in that and growth within these builders?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, from our surveys, I would say a general yes. Again, most of this comes over time when you talk about career alignment to purpose and role. Like I said, we have had several students who have done that within the 9 months, but that's still pretty fast to make that kind of transition. But in general, I would say yes, and growing. We'll tell you in 3 or 4 more years what it kind of looks like long term.
Yeah. And I would say also, just to hook onto that a little bit, is one of the things we're asking them to do as they come through the program, we're asking them to recruit other leaders. We're asking them to recruit future builders that they think might be a great fit for what we're doing. And that actually happened this year. We actually had quite a few year one students that actually said, hey, I've got someone that should be in this. And so now they're here. So, again, it's that whole concept of being able to train your replacement, right? They're not really training their replacement, but, being able to help us be able to go out and source, who should be a part of this? Who do you know that needs this? And that's been really exciting as well.
Let's talk about the high school builder challenge a little bit. We'll make a little shift on this. Is that okay? Can we make that shift?
Yeah.
And so we've talked about this. We did a webcast on this. We've spent some time. So if you go back to the BP10 archives, Todd has talked a little bit about this. We have a framework in the form of on our Facebook group. There is a 2 or 3 page kind of framework laid out. Bobby, why don't we start with you? Talk a little bit about what are you guys doing for high schoolers and what does this look like for you guys?
Yeah. So because we're in Austin, we've got a unique opportunity. There's a lot of tech companies here that happen to be looking for ways to invest in the community. And so we're in the process now of talking to a few of those companies. These are large companies that you would know that they want to help invest in that next generation of leaders. So what we're doing basically now is we're taking the Gallup 2 to 3 page, this is how this works for the Future Builder Challenge. And we're trying to translate that into what we could do. What does that look like over the course of a weekend? Who would we have involved in that conversation? Who would write the check to help us be able to sponsor those things? So we're just on the front edge of it, but it's something though that we've been talking about since the very beginning. In fact, when I brought this idea back, it was really something that we wanted to do, but we were already kind of down the road with what we were already doing. And so, but I'm really glad that we did this first, because I think we've learned a lot that's going to help us as we put this into, play. So,
right. I mean, we're kind of bouncing off of the program we already have, this emergent leader with 25 to 35-year-old leaders. One of the things we need when we enter into a high school is coaches, mentors who will walk with them, right, for a day and a half. So we've already kind of started building that pool of young leaders and coaches, because it's not just the 20 young leaders we have. We also have the 20 coaches. So really we've had, somewhere around 60 to 70 leaders over the last, 2 years who have been kind of a part of this process and program. And so it is kind of building that base for when we need to go into a high school. And like Bobby said, right now, we have a tentative yes on the support, because that's, again, from a nonprofit side, we raise support to do these things. We have sponsors, and so our marketplace leaders sponsor this initiative, and so we have a tentative yes on the money side. And then honestly, again, we have a number of people who have said yes on the we'll come alongside and help run it, the team leaders and those kind of things as you kind of walk through that process. And so then we're starting conversations with high schools.
That's right.
We've got a few of those that are in place right now as well. None of this moves quickly when you start talking with school districts and busy school schedules and all those kind of things. But what we believe is once you do one, other schools will start asking. So we've launched a similar thing with ABBA. We launched an elementary school reading program. So one of the groups that we've partnered with over the years has launched that. And so, it went from one elementary school in one school district to over 100 elementary schools in 9 school districts here in Central Texas over the last 7 years, right? And the way that works is once one principal hears what you're doing in another school, they start asking, well, why doesn't my school have that, right? And so you start responding to demand from the school district. And we think this will be the same, quite honestly. Like once we are able to do it once, pretty soon other principals are going to be asking like, well, why aren't we running this in my high school? And we'll be able to go back to the business community and say, well, the only reason we're not running it in their high school is because we need more support from you guys to do that. And so if you'd be willing to support it, there's a lot of kids who could be positively impacted.
And as these emergent, as these young leaders kind of go through the program and they graduate and they become alumni, we're going to use them to help us really manage this as well, because we want them in the room. We want them to work with these high school students and really be able to share their story and how it's helped them. And so I think that's going to be really powerful as well.
Jeff, what are you budgeting for a weekend like this when you think of other cities are thinking about like, we're trying to do this. What's the budget?
Great question. We've been having that question with you guys a little bit too.
He won't tell us. Todd won't tell us the answer.
So
he's not listening. I'm sure he's not listening right now.
I mean, our initial, so the basics is we want to get 500 tests, right? So I mean,
so that we can get the data and the analytics from Gallup on that group.
That's what it kind of takes to let Gallup come in and provide a lot of those analytics, which we think is just highly valuable. That's something we could never do. And we could have 500 kids in a room, and it would be really hard to say who should be moving forward, who should be thinking about this. So 500 is kind of our number, which gives us an initial
really
price
like a $10,000 base cost.
Right? Yeah, so 10,000 is our, if we have to get that to move forward, right? And so that's what we have the kind of tentative yes to is, okay, if we're in, then we'll do the 10,000 from this company. Now, what we know is there's probably another 10 to 15,000 on top of that, depending on who we can get to give food, facilities, all those kind of things, right? When you talk about a day and a half, 2-day type of a deal, you have food, facility, and then coaches. So, this is not one of those things that we're going to ask Bobby to volunteer his time for. But if we have a Gallup certified coach, then we'll pay them to come in and run the weekend. And so we're looking kind of $20,000 to $25,000 to take 500 students through this process over the course of a weekend would be, we think, a good number. And then we'll learn, right? We'll do it. We'll ask everybody, was that enough? Did that make sense? And then we'll go back year 2 and see. I'll just say from the Emergent Leader Initiative, we did the same thing. We just kind of ballparked a number. Here's what it would cost. I mean, we have lunch and dinner. We have all those numbers. We ran through it a year and we realized that's probably half what we should have asked for, because it was actually worth more than we thought. When you think about the connections you're making with these coaches and this material, and it took more than we thought it was going to take to really invest in people. But it's a learning process. That's why it's nice to be able to have a little bit of time to test, and then we're perfectly willing to share what we've done. So that if other people want to do it, they can hopefully get in a little bit faster than we did.
And we think that it'll be about 100 students that we'll have on a weekend, because we'll invite 200, we'll probably have 100 of them show up. But that's where having the analytics and having all that data from Gallup will be helpful for us to be able to create kind of that list and be able to work with that list to get it down to 100. So
Jeff, we spent some time here in Omaha thinking about keeping Omaha students here in Omaha. We're not Austin, where we're not necessarily the draw, although it's getting better here, and we call it the Silicon Prairie, right? The ability to the ability to track students, kind of keep them local. Is there a concern for that as you think about all the time you're spending putting into these students, both the high school and to these adults? Is there any thought to put into keeping them local so that all this effort stays in the area in which they've learned?
I'm an Austin native, so this whole idea of we've been kind of anti-growth for the last 30 years.
Although you would know by looking at the city,
the market has dictated otherwise. So I would just say generally no. We have a lot of people, but I think also because of how we started. So we've started with very established Austin leaders, from our coaches and then these young leaders. So I guess our current base is very Austin established. They're trying to build their companies in Austin, or they've built their company in Austin. So it's a good question as we look at these high schoolers, and it's something that we'll probably we'll look at. We're already partnering with people who kind of track high school to college movement for that very purpose of saying, okay, if you start in Austin but you end up in Virginia, where did you end up? How did that go? Can we stay in touch with you for 4 more years and figure out where you end up after that? So that's down the road for us. But right now, our bigger really driving factor is just these kids are here now.
That's right.
And so, Austin kind of has this motto, what starts here changes the world. UT developed it. The whole city's kind of bought onto it though. So we do actually kind of enjoy when things go from Austin and then happen somewhere else. We just still take credit for it wherever it finds a home. Finally, finds a home. So, but yeah, that's kind of how we're looking at it right now.
Yeah. It's a little unfair, to be honest, when we think about the Bay Area or Austin or Boston or some of those, not having, and yet the rest, I think, if I think about who's out in the chat room today or who's going to be listening to this, That's not an advantage in a lot of cities. A lot of cities are trying to keep their talent local, trying to build that talent, keep them there. And we're losing them here in the Midwest. We lose them to the coast, or we lose them down to Texas. We're trying to keep them around. I am sure, though, there is a draw to the Bay Area for students in Austin. Even as great as Austin is, I'm sure Boston or the Bay Area is a big pull for a lot of students.
I think it's important, though. That's why when we go through this process, you have to involve the local leaders that are already there that can help maybe be able to maintain that talent in the community, because there's a lot of dynamic leaders in every city.
And that's what's going to do it, right? I mean, it's jobs and opportunity.
That's right.
That will a lot of times help these students make the decision. I mean, you can get real practical too. We're talking about offering, college scholarships to the folks who, and you could make that to any Texas school or something, so, there are some practical ways to do that, but you're right. The connection they make to other business people, I mean, we know that just scientifically, like the connections you make in your college years, those first 90 days tend to drive 4 years of relationship. And so if we can connect them in their senior year to a business leader in Austin, and that's a huge connection that will have a tendency to sway years of their life that way.
That's the answer I wanted to hear. So thanks. Thanks for saying that. We just have a few minutes left. Anything I might have missed? Anything else that you guys want to promote? Anything else we want to talk about before we wrap it?
I would just say, Jim, that for all of the coaches out there that are trained for the BP10, I would just encourage you to find an organization to partner with, because I know that even for me as a newer coach, a couple of years ago, I was trying to figure out, how do I do this exactly? Like, what does this look like in real life? And so it was super helpful for me to be able to partner with ABBA and Jeff to be able to figure this out together. And so I think there's some real power in you doing that, because you're able to hear other people's perspectives and you're able to kind of lay it all out on the table and say, hey, here's what we want to do. And so I think having a partner is just really important.
Yeah. And, we both discussed it. It's in the book. As we go through the process ourselves every year,
it's in the book. Read the book, buy the book.
We remind ourselves of some of these basic principles, of like, what does your market actually want?
That's right.
You might have this great idea, like this whole program itself, but what is the market demanding? Because until we find that, until we can say it in a way that it taps into this demand that's already out there, we're just going to be pushing a rock uphill, And so even as we approach these tech companies and different things, even with them, we've gotten a little more specific to say, okay, we want to find 500 builders, but we might even add in another layer of it that identifies tech builders, right? Because that's what they want. They want to keep the talent in Austin, right? They realize how difficult it is to hire sometimes. So they're like, look, we want to identify these future leaders, and we want to identify those who are already bent towards a technology mindset. And then we want to really tap into them. So as we unearth this kind of demand in the companies, it makes it a lot easier for them to say yes. Of like, oh, you might help me find 50 qualified people here in this city that I could hire. All right, let's talk. That's a real value to them. And then they also understand it's a value to the 450 who didn't get hired, or whatever too. And so they're happy to do that. But that's been part of our process. Is we've said, okay, we have something that works. But now how do we scale it to really kind of move it through the city? And that's been about identifying demand that we know we have a good answer to. We just got to frame it properly. So,
and we know this works. And, what we say in every meeting is that what would our lives look like if someone would have really invested in us in our teens and our 20s and our 30s? And so we use that as kind of a catalyst for this whole program.
And our coaches echo that.
That's right.
When a 65-year-old, extremely successful ex-CEO who's now looking for his next job, he retired from his last one.
Yep.
When he looks down and says, if I'd had a personal board of directors
That's right.
when I was in my 20s, I would have gone so much further, right? Is like so to have them give that same comment to these young leaders of these are really good tools, take advantage of what you're being given, has been really helpful to us.
Yep.
Some great information, and we could probably talk another hour on these things. But Bobby, Jeff, if anybody wanted to contact you guys to get either in areas of partnership or more information, or they just want to pick your brain on this, how would they get in touch with you, and Jeff, then you?
They can reach me if they want to go to my website, which is just really simple. It's actually, if they go to bobbyshawconsulting.com, they can reach me there, and I'm also on Facebook.
John, we're at abbaconnect.net.
ABBA.
ABBA, yeah, connect.net. And you can also find us on LinkedIn. So there are a number of Jeff Johnsons on LinkedIn, but
I'm sure there's a few million out there.
But I mean, we would love to connect. If other people are doing things that they are finding success with, I mean, we'd love to listen, learn, and share.
And folks can email us if they can't find any of those. coaching@gallup.com. Send us an email. We'll route that information forward. Jeff, Bobby, thank you for taking the time today to talk about this. I always get super pumped up myself. I don't think people realize how exciting it is just for me to be able to sit here and talk to you guys about this. I do, hundreds of these a year now, and I still get pumped when I hear about what's going on and what you guys are doing and the change you're making in the lives of people, not just teens, but young adults and mid-career. And even, believe me, I think when you're close to post-career and you get a chance to mentor back, I think that's a legacy moment, right? And I think that's just as important as anything else you've done in your career. So I appreciate you guys doing that. Absolutely. You guys hang tight for a second. We'll remind everyone else to take full advantages of all the resources we have available. For BP10, some of you maybe have not checked it out on the new Gallup Access platform. So go to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. We'll get you there and sign in. I would use your normal credentials that you use. All the BP10 resources are available out there. If you have any questions, I mentioned this earlier, you can reach us coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones that are available. You might want to, if you're a YouTuber, you like to watch stuff on YouTube, we have a whole channel dedicated to it. Just go to YouTube and search CliftonStrengths. If you are maybe you listen to these on your phone as a podcast, and why wouldn't you? Hundreds of hours of content available for you. Any podcast player, iPhone, Android, just search Gallup Webcasts from the podcatcher and it will get you there as well. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach, or see the training, the BP10 training that's available. I know we have some coming up around our summit this summer that's coming up June 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. You might want to attend those or get some BP10 training available off our courses page. Just go to courses.gallup.com and we've got some more information about when and where and how much that is there. And I mentioned this in the beginning, but if you want to get access to all of our live webcasts and join us live, ask those questions like many did in the chat room today, you can visit our Eventbrite page. Just go to gallup.eventbrite.com. Join in the conversation, facebook.com/groups/called to coach. I want to thank you for joining us today. If you're in the chat room, thanks for joining us live. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.